You're watching SeptumSin versus the world. I'm SeptumSin. I'm with Kotobukijake.
Hey.
We're here to tell you about what we watched in July. And apparently I did a lot more finished viewing in July.
Yeah.
You watched a lot of, I'm guessing, long-running series like X-Files and stuff
like that. Yes, but I did not spend much time in front of the TV last month. I couldn't do it. There just was not much time. But yeah, a lot of it was spent on series that are not complete.
Well, I spent a week with 102 degree fever and not being able to do hardly anything but watch stuff. So I ended up watching a lot more. But I guess we'll start off. You can introduce our anime anticlimax for the month.
Well, for those of you who didn't catch it, we covered The Slayers, which is a classic. We had a surprisingly enthusiastic response from Ron Kroll, as he is often known. Like I said, we may make an anime convert yet, but check that out on our channel.
I think Brittany was actually surprised that so many people were so positive about the series.
Well, yeah, it's a classic.
Good series. Yeah. It is a good series. And despite dissenting opinions, I do think it holds up.
Right.
Did you watch more than the first season?
I didn't have time to, but I want to. I kind of, if I have the chance to this month, if I have the option, I'm going to try to launch into next, but I don't expect to finish it anytime soon.
So inside Movies Galore, we had 4 films that were from Forrest. I'll hit 2 and I'll let Jake hit the other 2.
Okay.
I'm going to just go ahead and hit the 2 that I was there for the whole time, because I wasn't there for one at all, and the other one I was only able to give my first thoughts on. The first was This Is Spinal Tap. This is more of a Jake favorite than a me favorite.
It's a classic.
It is. It was a good discussion. I think we did good with that. And then The Brave Little Toaster, which to me is a classic child's film I watched when I was little, so it's kind of cool to revisit. So what about the other 2?
Well, the other 2 that Forrest had us watch were we watched. This really is kind of weird. Who's covering what here? We followed up this nice kids movie from the people who would go on to start Pixar with a trauma movie, Class of Nukem High, which I had mixed feelings about, but on the whole, I liked it more than I expected to. And then we watched one of our Versus Award contenders, New York Ninja, which is actually a movie from the 70s or 80s rather, that was brought back and redubbed because the sound no longer existed. And it was released last year. Huh?
I really like New York Ninja.
It was
fun. Hope I conveyed it, but I just was out of it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, just like now, this is pushing the envelope, just me talking here, because I was returning to work for the first time that week. But from what I had heard, Ron did not care for it.
He did not.
What was the general sentiment pretty positive?
What's that?
Was the general sentiment pretty positive? I didn't watch the whole thing.
For the most part. I think Ron's sentiment mainly was that it was boring, and I kind of agreed with that, but he also apparently did not care for the over-the-top kind of jokey
I love that
nature, which most of the rest of us, that was part of the reason we liked it. But anyway, yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. It was weird and interesting that going into it, I was the only one beside Forrest who had seen it more than once. That was really weird.
Oh, you saw it more than once. Wow.
Well, I watched it before we did our voting, and then
Oh, wait.
yeah,
Who did our what? No.
to nominate.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the original Class of Nukem High was a fun movie. The
Hmm.
problem with Trauma is I like the sense of humor, but I'm not very good with the gross out stuff. And
Yeah, that was
I
much
think
less than I feared.
the trilogy is a fun trilogy. The only one I haven't seen of the Nukem High ones is the second movie in the new series. But which is weird. I haven't seen that many trauma movies, and this happened to be one of them that I've seen. So it's actually kind of funny in that way. But I didn't watch it for this month's view. So I have a lot, and Jacob doesn't have very many. So I guess I'll count to 10. And after the 10th one, Jacob will do one. And then we'll keep doing it like that.
Right.
Here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. We're going to recover some terrain that Jacob's that's done covered, and who knows, I might accidentally hit one of his. So we're going to start off with a documentary entry for the 2022 awards. White Hot, The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie and Fitch. This one actually might very well make a list for Oscars, so it might be interesting. It's a Netflix documentary about what you would expect it to be about, Abercrombie and Fitch, which Jake and I were of college age during its peak years. And I don't mean the peak years during the Theodore Roosevelt administration. I mean the peak years when they revamped it as a frat boy thing. And they had that song. You know the song, right?
Maybe.
Abercrombie and Fitch song. It's like, I like
Maybe.
girls who wear Abercrombie and Fitch and all that. It was really popular when we were in college.
I just don't remember.
I always had thought that there was a lot of homoeroticism in a lot of their photography, and I was right, and it was intentional. So you had a bunch of these frat guys who would be incredibly anti-gay shopping at a store that is very gay. It's actually kind of funny that. But they were also very racist and very sexist, so which caught up to them. The issue with Abercrombie and Fitch is that they celebrated themselves in being an exclusionary kind of club.
That's probably why the frat boys liked it.
And eventually, exclusionary just isn't a part of the culture these days. It gets you canceled if you're exclusionary these days. So they've had to rebrand. It was really interesting. Pretty good editing. I actually knocked off Texas Chainsaw for editing on it, and I still not filmed that documentary feature yet, but it's gone a ways towards it. I knocked out another short. I've actually almost filled out the entirety of short films. Not like just the short film category, not like animated or documentary. But I watched one called Heart Shot, which is another Netflix one, which may be going for that Oscar gold. It's about this group of 2 teen girls who are lesbians, and they're kind of like having this weekend together while one of the girls' mother's away. But one of the girls is hiding some secrets that the other doesn't know about. I really swear it starts off what could be considered a very artistic piece that's very LGBTQ friendly, and then goes and pulls this weird 180 and goes into the weird action thriller. It's
Is this a live action short? Or
yes,
is it?
it
Oh.
is live action, and it's not bad, but it's definitely weird.
Hmm.
All right, let's see here. Of course, for the Bad Ben discussion, which unfortunately I wasn't able to do because Moa's not been available. I rewatched Bad Ben Haunted Highway, which I've been watching it sometimes to go to bed because Kim has to have something on to go to bed to, and I've gotten her to do that. So I've watched the first half for a while, but I haven't watched the last half in a long time, so it's kind of cool watching that. I'd say this is probably my second favorite Bad Ben film. He takes this drive as kind of as with he takes this job with drop you off and starts work on Halloween night, and he ends up picking up and dropping off all these different monsters and spooky creatures.
Hmm.
It even has one creepy moment that does get a mild scare, which is nice.
Nice.
So if you're not big into Bad Ben, I would recommend the first Bad Ben, Bad Ben 3, and this one. The rest you can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
So the next one is an anime.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a series called Eternal Alice. I was looking forward to this because I'd like to watch an Alice in Wonderland adapted series, and it really wasn't. I think that they may have seen the covers of the books and thought that they look cool, and maybe we could use that to form an anime around.
So.
It's about this world where Alice books, and apparently Alice does things like Indiana Jones work and Star Wars and all these things. She rescues princesses, pretty much anything but what was in the actual Alice book. And there's this young author who really likes Alice books, and he wants to. And I really think that Alice, because one thing I've noticed is the Japanese tend to use Alice as an interchange for like strange or fantasy. So when they say Alice books, my guess is that they mean fantasy books. But these girls have this ability to become Alices, where they use keyblades and fight each other, becoming magical girls, so they can take each other out. And if they take each other out, they can unlock each other's hearts, read the story in the hearts, and when they complete the story, they're allowed to get one wish grant.
Well, it makes sense when you think about it, because wasn't the White Rabbit like the original QB?
Yeah. It was, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't really all that great. Kind of boring at parts. Art style was kind of eh.
Mm-hmm.
Animation was a little bit lazy. I don't think I'd want to revisit it. I watched an Evan Jacobs film called Give My Regards to O'Hare. And it was a pretty good one. Wait, no, it wasn't. It was another one of those kind of monologuing pieces. It was technically good at the very beginning and at the very end. It kind of reminded me of the start of a Woody Allen film, the way that they did it. He did a really good job with that, but then it just became a monologue about him and the breakup with his girlfriend. He flies over to this place to live with her, and then she's like, nope, sorry, we're breaking up. And then the rest of it's about him being pissed off, talking to her about the breakup until the end, which I think would be better for a short and not an hour-long film.
I've heard that story many times.
One that I won't cover very much because you covered it last month, which was Camp Confidential. Which was...
Well, that's on my list again because I watched it again with the family.
Yeah, good film. I'm not going to rehash much, but I did watch it, and It was good. A lot of my list is going to be me catching up on all the stuff for the Versus Awards, because at the end of July, I actually watched all of the nominees. So I voted.
You'll
Unfortunately,
probably have me beat.
well, I think I'll get you beat just because the author of Bad Seeds decided that he got pissy when he didn't get the Oscar nomination and took all of his stuff away. So now nobody can see it.
So thanks for nominating something no one can watch.
I didn't know. It was really easy to see when I saw it because it was all
Well,
over.
it wasn't even when we were talking about it. Even when the Oscars were coming up, we couldn't find it. Yeah. Anyway.
It was like when I saw it was on YouTube, and it was like real easy to catch. And I guess they just decided, nope, I'm picking my ball and going home.
Okay.
But I did watch a short film that you nominated called Stonen Finners. But it's about this kid who has kind of a crappy relationship with his father. And his father ends up saying, nope, you're not even worthy to take your instrument out because you're terrible. You're a terrible person, and I hate you. And so he goes out to the beach and discovers these rocks that have kind of a tone to them, and learns to play the rocks. And people like that he can play the rocks, but his father still says, you suck. I hate you, son, even though he didn't really say it, but he pretty much is saying that. It's like, you suck, you're a terrible person, you're never going to be anything. And then he's doing this, and he plays the Stones again at the urging, I think, of his son or something like that. And it was okay. I thought it was decent, but I didn't vote for it. One that might be on your list of 4, Jacob, is one that you sent us for short for animation, which you can't even find an IMDb page for it, which was that Something Fishy.
Yeah.
Which is so short that I don't even remember it. It's only on the list right now because I haven't watched 6 animated featured short films yet. Matter of fact, I haven't even watched 6 animated features yet, so it's on that list too. Well, actually, no, it's not on that list, but it's on voice acting. It's on, even though I don't have the names behind the voice
well,
acting.
again, I've been going on the principle that short films are not in the major categories. I don't know.
Once I end it, but
yeah,
I mean, they have acting, they have writing, they have editing, and to me, I feel like that allows them to have something, but not many of them will be able to do anything against a feature film anyway.
Well, I'll go ahead and talk about that one then real quick. It's a real simple one I found on YouTube, and it amused me. And it is a 2022 potential contender. It's basically this woman is getting ready for a date, and she's talking to her pet goldfish, and her goldfish is reacting. Like, you see his facial reactions. He's not saying anything, but there's like also I think they subtitled the goldfish's response, and she is a complete flake. She clearly has very, 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 very bad taste in men, and she keeps going on about this guy that you're like seeing all these red flags go off, and the fish is seeing the red flags and keeps trying to warn her. And when she leaves, you think it's going to end a certain way. And then the short goes a different way. And actually, I loved and hated the ending at the same time. But it was very interesting. And like you said, it's very short. And actually, along those lines, I'll go ahead and mention that he also, a mutual friend of ours, had not seen our nominated short Gaslight. So he showed it to us when we had a get-together. And that's a similar thing. Very short, very amusing. Both of those are worth looking up, and just if you just have a few minutes and want something to give you a chuckle.
All right.
Anywho,
well, then I saw the short When the Sun Sets, which is a nice little short film about South Africa during apartheid, and I think you talked about it last time. Not much I can say other than it's kind of heart-wrenching and tells you a lot of the craziness going on at that time. It's one of the ones that we had up for I think it was a Versus Award nominee.
I believe it is nominated, yeah.
So it didn't get my vote, but it was nominated. And it was good. It was good, though. And then finally, my 10th on this is a film that's also a nominee for the Versus Award, which is Mass, which was about which Jake also covered last time.
Talk about a wrenching film.
About like two groups of parents, one group who had a victim of a school shooting kid, and the other one, which was the parents of the shooter, and their varying degrees of political differences, and just it was a fairly gut-wrenching film. It was very well done, very much worth seeing, and I'm glad to have it in the collection.
Cool.
Well, that's 10.
Alrighty. Well, I've got now 3 to mention. And the first one I think you talked about a couple of months ago, but I could be wrong. I believe you had nominated it for Versus Awards. This was one that actually got an Oscar nomination for adapted screenplay last year. Because it was one of those ones where they had that stupid ass bullshit, which luckily we won't have to talk about much more going forward. But this film was nominated for adapted screenplay a year sooner than it should have been. And that is an Indian production called The White Tiger, which actually, that was my last minute attempt to cram one more film in before I submitted my nominees. And it did end up making a mild change to my nominees. I really enjoyed the movie. I really did. It's a very interesting movie. It's about this guy who grew up basically in the slums of, out in the boonies in India. And he grows up with a grandmother who basically dominates the family and tries to run it as a criminal enterprise, but they just don't have enough money there to do it. And basically, not necessarily, but you know what I mean. Like, she runs it as if she was, the Dawn or whatever. And he is chafing under her yoke, and he ingratiates himself when the boss, the slumlord, he meets his second son for the first time, and somehow sees immediately his golden ticket, his way out. And he somehow cons his way into becoming a driver for the second driver for the family, and proves himself to be just as amoral and unscrupulous as the people he works for. And the film, it features Priyanka Chopra Jonas in a supporting role. It's got great music, great production values, really well done. Not the most likable of characters overall, but I enjoyed it, and I was happy to finally see that one. And I hope that was a Netflix production. I really hope that gets a physical release, but I don't think it has yet, has it?
Which one was it?
The White Tiger?
Not that I know of, no.
Yeah. That I'd like to see get a Criterion release. But yeah.
I'd like to see some of the Oscar winners that, get something.
Yeah. Yeah. Coda still has nothing in the pipeline.
I mean, American Factory was supposed to have been a long time ago, but never has. Octopus should have gotten released.
Right. Well, Coda was a friggin' Best Picture winner. You'd think that.
Coda, Apple's not willing to get rid of their stranglehold on that one either.
Jerks. Anyway.
Um, so speaking of Oscars and versus awards, a film that Jacob talked about a lot the last time, Parallel Mothers, I finally did see that, and it's a versus award, so of course I saw it. And it was a decent enough film. I'm not in love with it, but I can understand. Very artistic. About these two that have their children kind of switched, which is a big plot point. And the two mothers, a young mother who kind of gave birth in her teens, and one who was giving birth at an older age, who was trying to, it's about time I have a kid. And they kind of develop a relationship, and it's one of those films. It's one of those Italian films, isn't it?
Spanish.
Yeah, well, in any case, it's just one of those films that's kind of just meanders along its line. They do their thing. It's very slow, but that's how European films are. But if you like slow artistic films, then you will love that one. I also watched Last Night in Soho, and I liked it that I ended up showing Kim, and she really liked it. So I watched it twice this month. And
see, it would have done so much better with the nominees if you guys had watched that one sooner.
Yeah, it was just
and if Dave had tried harder.
Getting to them all is there, and Dave mixing up his orders again.
Well, he also didn't nominate most categories, and I know he loved that movie.
Yep. It was a good movie. I mean, about this girl who wants to be a fashion designer, so she goes to London, and she can't deal with mean girls, so she moves out into this little apartment and starts having these dreams where she becomes this other woman back in the 60s. And they first start off glamorous, but it quickly turns dark and to a haunting mystery involving ghosts. It's, Kim, I think, stated it best. It's Crimson Peak, but good.
And it also was a great acting platform for Thomasin McKenzie, who really had a hell of a year last year. She also had a supporting role in Old and a small role in Power of the Dog. And all of those were worth watching. But yeah.
It was good. It was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. It might have gotten my nominations had I been able to catch it in time. I watched a lot of films over the past year. I just didn't get to that one. I got it when it was on sale, and then I was able to finally watch it. I watched Eat Wheaties, which is a one that I really even have to watch because it's only up for the poster. But it was, it was one of those that I'm still conflicted about. It's a comedy about this guy, and everybody considers him annoying, and so they treat him like shit, and except for his brother, and well, actually, just except for his brother, because his best friend still treats him like shit. And he talks about, well, I used to go to school with this famous person, and she used to say, "Eat Wheaties," as one of her phrases. And he ends up finding her Facebook and writing messages to her. And turns out that he's accidentally putting them on public. So people think he's this obsessive stalker. And then he loses everything until he decides, well, since I've lost near everything, he finds this inept guy who didn't realize he had to practice the bar exam in order to practice law, and helps him pass the bar exam in exchange with trying to get his case taken to court to get this restraining order taken down so that he can go to his class reunion, because there was that minuscule chance that she might show up. Again, I'll have to let this stew in my mind and watch it again. It was not my favorite poster, but it was a good poster. I'm not going to lie. I voted for Barb and Star, and I'm proud of it.
That was a great poster.
I wanted to vote for Death Toilet 4, but Barb and Star just beat it. As though I really wanted to watch Death Toilet 4, I was going to watch it anyway. But Barb and Star is a film that I would never watch, but that poster kept pulling me in, and I was like, okay, $5, I'll watch it. And, sure enough, it got 2 nominations from me.
Yeah.
Hello,
I
Mike.
think more than that, actually.
Uh,
Hey, Mike McNally.
as you get to watch me straining my voice. So another one that I think your mother was big on, and you talked about, which was Land,
Yeah.
which is about this woman who decides she's going to go isolate out in the Rockies because she's tired of life and she wants to kill herself. So she wants to go out in the wilderness and die in the elements, essentially. But finds more of a will to live and eventually a will to return to society through the help with a friendship that she forms with this one dude. And it was very good. The ending was quite sad, but hopeful at the same time. I might have to watch it again. It was fairly good. It didn't get my vote, but definitely I can see.
Notably, Robin Wright's directorial debut, and she is one of those things where she took the role of the lead because like something fell through with the people she was going after. But yeah, it was pretty fun seeing that. Yeah.
So one that I was very surprised when I found that Dave submitted it, and I think the only reason why it got on there is because Dave mixed up his orders. Because it's very like almost entirely opposite of his belief system, which is Eating Our Way to Extinction.
I still need to see that.
Which is a very vegan documentary. It's a basic, you need to switch to being vegan or you're going to destroy the planet. You evil, evil person. Why are you not vegan? That's basically most of the substance. Documentary is 90% hopelessness with 10% hope, but hope with preachiness. And I found it flawed in that manner because I think that the message is good in a way, but I feel like the way that they presented it was flawed in the fact that they kind of berated you for the entirety of it, and that's not going to change minds. I think the only people who are going to watch this and say, you know what, maybe I should eat less meat are people who don't eat meat in the first place, or people who are already thinking about being vegan in the first place.
Right.
If you're right wing, you're gonna turn it off within the first 10 minutes. And if you're a moderate, it's probably not going to change your mind because you're going to be like,
Well, you could even be a flaming liberal, and it would be difficult. Like I just love meat. It would be hard to break it off, you know.
But definitely, it's one of those. But it surprised me that Dave, who was a very hardcore conservative, was one that put that forward.
Right.
Who posted a picture of himself eating a hog head.
Yeah.
It just seems weird that he would put forward a vegan documentary.
Right.
I finished watching the Marvel series, Miss Marvel, the newest one.
Oh, I still haven't finished it. I need to.
It's a fun take on the
Is
character.
it over?
Yeah, it's only 6 episodes.
I know. Life got in the way.
But I think that'll be interesting. Like, you'll probably finish it by probably the end of August or something, so we probably get your take on it then. But, I guess this is one of those cases where it benefits me to only have a basic understanding of the character. And if you only have a basic understanding of the character, it feels fairly accurate. Though a lot of people do have this issue that they put her powers because the comic book character gets her powers from the mists from the Indian.
Terrigen mist, yeah.
And this one, she has them already because she's actually a jinn, and they really attach most of it to her Muslim Pakistani heritage. Matter of fact, I'd say 90% of it is attached to the heritage. It hits you with that again and again. I didn't mind it because they make her a likable character. They make the cast pretty likable. It still kind of hits a lot of the boring. It's not boring at first, but I swear Disney overuses the same basic tropes over and over again, and it's starting to get tiring.
Yeah.
But it was okay. It was a likable cast. I enjoyed it overall. I think that they handled her decent. You get to see her costumed up by the end, and they kind of hint at an X-Men attachment towards the end, which will be interesting.
I'd
And
heard about that.
I don't mind them kind of reforming the clandestines, because the clandestines were kind of a racist creation anyway. So, so that was okay. But it was an okay thing. Decent, not my favorite of the Marvel shows, but, 6 episodes. King Richard, I saw that finally.
Hmm?
Will Smith's Best Acting win. And I believe he was up for his awards as well. Didn't get my vote, not because of the slap, but because there was somebody I liked better. But still pretty good. And really, it's kind of an origin story of 2 major tennis players, and centers around their father. It really feels like a rehash of another film that he did that was Oscar bait a long time ago. But this one, actually, they were both true stories, come to think of it. You remember that one? It was the one where he was homeless with his son.
Oh, Pursuit of Happiness?
Yeah. Though I think that
Yeah.
the father in Pursuit of Happiness was a much better person, in my opinion, than the father of these other two. But
Right.
still, it was a good movie overall. Well
I think the way they portray Richard Williams in the film, he comes off as deeply flawed, but he has some pretty good ideas.
Yeah.
Like, I do like the idea that he doesn't want the girls to spend their entire childhoods doing these tournaments the way a lot of kids are groomed to do. I think that was probably a better call than a lot of parents would have made. But yeah, he definitely had his flaws, just like apparently Will Smith does.
Very well acted, so well worth the nomination.
Mm-hmm.
I finished Comey Can't Communicate. I kept thinking it was over, which is why I kept bringing it up. But it's definitely over this time for the season, and it was very much worth the time and effort. It's a delightful show about this girl who has crippling anxiety and can't communicate. There's this other guy who used to be a Chunibyo, or whatever his name himself, and so he's trying to reform himself, but he's really good about reading people. So he's able to actually strike up friendship with her, and they set the goal of her making 100 friends. And it's very good. I mean, it's kind of celebrated for having a non-binary character in it, but it's not the first time they've done that. But a lot of times they present non-binary characters as very free-spirited. Well, non-binary is free-spirited, basically, with a lot of the anime I've seen non-binary characters in. So
this is not making 100 friends in the sense that we saw in Bigot HK,
no,
right?
No, not that kind of thing. I think that Comey, they give her these different looks. One, of course, where they get her like the stark beauty type figure that they do, where she's almost statuesque in her beauty, and I really don't like her that way. But when they have her do these things, like where she gets like nervous, she does these like shaking, or when she's curious about something, she has little cat ears that appear on her head, and it's just insanely cute and mostly wholesome. Very much worth a view. I hate that it's mostly Netflix invested, because it means that they'll probably never release a physical. So, which also makes me mad, because Little Witch Academia fell into that. But who knows? Maybe this one will be popular enough to get a physical. It's well worth it.
It's been popular. Yeah.
I did watch Quiet Place 2 finally with Kim, and again up for a Versus Award. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I mean, it kind of continues off of the last one, where they kind of found a way of killing it, and kind of brings kind of hope at the end. I agree with Ken when I said I'm not sure if it was a world that needed to be revisited, but it was fine. I liked the first one better, but it was fine. It was a decent film. I did like how they used sound. The use of sound, not quite as good as the first one, but definitely still there. I mean, where you're cringing at every sound, even at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Or the lack thereof, you know.
And then last but not least, on this grouping of 10, Belfast, which, you know, nice movie about these kids this kid's growing up in the Protestant versus Catholic section of time in Belfast. And quite decent film. That's all I really have to say about that. Yep. I think you talked about it already anyway at one point.
Right.
So, we'll let that stand.
Okay. Well, Belfast probably would have been mentioned sooner or later anyway, but I'm going to resist the temptation of going straight into that one and just keep my order. Next up, I have a film that was kind of a random watch and kind of not so much. A big ongoing thing. This has taken up a lot of my very limited viewing time. Has been going through X-Files. The family, generally, we've been in a groove pretty much of sitting down to eat dinner and watching an episode of X-Files. And that's kind of how it's working. And so it's going to take forever to get through it. But as it turned out, this month, we finished off season 5. And I had seen this years ago, but I had not really realized exactly how it played into the series. But apparently season 5 directly leads into the movie that came out in 98, which was technically called X-Files, but it had the tagline "Fight the Future," and that ended up becoming its unofficial subtitle. But we took a break from the series to watch the movie before going into season 6. So I can't really talk about the show, but I can talk about the movie. And I hadn't realized this before. Apparently, Chris Carter wanted to use the movie to pretty much wrap up the series to date, and then to do a series of random movies, like maybe a handful of more movies to just explore different things and tie up loose ends. But apparently Fox saw the money and said no, as these things tend to happen. So essentially the movie was in production during season 5 of the series. And they, of course, went from the movie into season 6 and, kept going. But anyway, the movie itself basically kind of, it all honestly runs together for me, and I'm trying to remember where it was on the story because I've been watching so much lately. But it involved frozen aliens being found, I want to say, up in Canada. And I want to say also that I feel like the Antarctic was involved too. I don't know if you remember the movie well enough to say that. But essentially it is, if I'm remembering correctly, it was kind of right before or right around the time that Mulder kind of lost his faith in everything that he'd been doing. And so he is struggling through his own period of trying to make sense of it all. I think this was when he had recently learned that much of his life was, in a sense, a setup. And obviously, Scully still hasn't fully embraced all of that, even though there's plenty of reason for her to by this point. But essentially, I saw the movie, like I said, years and years ago. I had seen most of the first couple seasons of the show and very little afterwards. I recently saw a season 6 episode where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I saw that, which actually had Bruce Campbell in it. But the movie itself was kind of an outlier for me, and I didn't really know until now how it fit into the series. I just can't remember exactly how because I've been watching so much. But it's a good movie. It probably would work fairly well as a standalone, but much, much better if you have a familiarity with the show. It is entertaining. And I think that if Carter had been able to follow his plan, we might have had a pretty good series of movies. But, so far season 6 has had its highs and its lows. And I just watched an episode that reminded me a lot of Crawl, but with weird, creepy sea monster instead of alligators. But, but anyway, that's that one.
It gets really Monster of the Week, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So you've got 2 left, I guess?
Essentially.
Okay, because I can do these in two bits.
Yeah.
So, first bit.
Yeah.
So I finally decided to say heck with it. I still haven't seen the one Bond film, but I went ahead and did see No Time to Die. Mainly just so I could see it for the Versus Awards. It didn't really make a huge splash. It was okay. Really and truly my favorite so far of the Daniel Craig Bonds. I haven't seen, God, what's the one that starts with an S? It's
Spectre.
I haven't seen Spectre, but I did, but the, God, what was that one before Spectre? The one
Skyfall.
Skyfall.
That was the good one.
Was my favorite one. Most people love Casino Royale, and it is a good action film, but not a good Bond film by my reckoning. And to me, a Bond film is different than a Bond book, which is why I look at it differently. Because Bond has had many years to build up what a Bond film is.
Yeah.
I think that No Time to Die does have a good end. To me, I think if you wanted to get rid of James Bond and say this is the end of the James Bond series, now let's take it and let's have a trans person of color being 007. This would be the way to do it, because you could end James Bond movies and just call them 007 movies or something like that, and start a whole new series, and you could do this.
They also theoretically set up a way to continue the Bond name. Theoretically. Yeah.
I still like the way that they did it in the original Casino Royale. Well, not the original, because that was a TV movie, but the Peter Sellers Casino Royale, which I think that was the best explanation. I think that should have been canon. But still, I think that my goal is, I am hoping there's a big anniversary coming out for Bond soon. So my hope is that they're waiting for the anniversary to do a 4K of all the movies. Right now they have the 4Ks of some of them in packs, but I'm hoping they'll do an entire 4K set. And I'll upgrade my DVD set to 4K.
Yeah, I might have to get that.
That's why I didn't get the Blu-ray set, because it's still missing that last film. And I'm just like, no, I'm just going to wait and I'll get the 4K set. And there, I mean, unlike, say, the Halloween set, because they were releasing all of those on 4K, I'm fine with Blu-ray because I've got the whole thing. But Bond, if I get this, I have like 3 films that are not a part of that set. So I'm willing to upgrade to the 4K set when they do that, which is why it won't be in my collection until then. But that's going to be a fun upgrade. I know they're going to do it. They're just waiting. I can't remember what's that big. There's a big anniversary coming up. Bond. Let's see, Bond and.
Well, I think it's like the 70th anniversary in
60th.
2 years or 1 year. One year maybe.
This year is the 60th anniversary.
60th anniversary, right, of Dr. No. Yeah, that's right.
From 1962.
Nice.
So
nice.
I'm thinking that they're probably going to use this at the end of the year to announce that 4K collection. So to me, it would be great. You know, you could end the Bond series, and that way you wouldn't have to say, we've got a female, but we're going to call her James Bond. Instead of doing that, just create a new character, keep them with the 007, and that way you can make them wherever you want. You can make a female character of color. You can make them American. You can make them trans. You can make them whatever you want.
Right.
Because all they have to do is be that agent. And you wouldn't have to say, yes, this person is named James Bond. What? It's it just, to me, that makes more sense.
Right.
And they could take the series in a much different direction that way too, because they no longer have to be beholden to the James Bond character. They can make this 007 be very different. They don't have to be as violent. They don't have to be as sexist. They can be this they could be a simple like detective basic spy movie with very little action. You could go in a different direction after this, in my opinion.
I hope the set you talk about, it'd be great if they have all the canon films and the original Casino Royale, and maybe just throw in Never Say Never Again. I mean, why not?
I'd love to see all of that together, including that the original short TV film of Casino Royale as well, which so far is just on that Peter Sellers movie as an extra. Which is another reason why you should get that if you don't have it, because it's got the very first James Bond thing on it. So, next up, I created I finally went ahead and I tracked down some copies of Rumic World. The original stuff. Unfortunately, because a lot of it was on YouTube, some of the songs got cut because of copyright, and the copyright holder has no interest in ever releasing them again. Rumiko Takahashi said she doesn't want anybody looking at them. So I doubt that they're going to be released in her lifetime.
That's annoying.
So I made my own. So first I had to rewatch them, make sure they burned to disc okay. So the first one I rewatched was The Fire Tripper, which was really, is a
nice.
These are all like feature length OVAs, and this one's about this woman who ends up getting caught in an explosion and being transported to medieval Japan, and getting caught in the middle of it, and she is searching for this little boy, and she runs into this one guy with this group of like kind of people who are helping preserve this village, and you get to learn a lot of things. I'm not going to spoil it. It's on YouTube. All these are on YouTube, so you can watch them. And it's a good one. It's a fairly decent one. Not my favorite of the ones, but still a fun one. Then I watched Maris the Shojo, which is also Super Gal, if I have any names alternate, which is probably the most comedic one. Which is about this girl who is a space detective or space, she's a space cop, and she's helping to track down this person who's been kidnapped. And she's from a planet to where they're like 6 times stronger. The problem is, because you're 6 times stronger, you end up breaking everything if you don't have restraints. And she's down on her luck quite a bit because of that. It's a very fun one. It's like I say, it's one of the few on here that's more comedy than drama or horror, and it's a good one. I put on the that 50th anniversary short that kind of had all of the basic characters like Ataru and Lum and all them together, which Lum is going to get. Urusei Yatsura is going to get a Blu-ray release, which is cool.
Woo!
I wonder if they're going to do the OVAs as well. I'm hoping that they're going to get those and then maybe do a movie set, which would be great since they've got those released. And then I'll be able to either sell my old copies or put them somewhere else in safe storage and just use this one that's probably much less bulky. Because that's probably one of the bulkiest pieces of my collection is Urusei Yatsura sets. But let's see here. I watched another Evan Jacobs film, a sequel to Shut Up and Get in the Car, called Shut Up and Get Back in the Car. I did a Anhedenia project on it. It takes place directly afterwards, where these brothers kind of get together, going to their mother's house for Thanksgiving, and they kind of have it out in the car right over. And this is the same thing, except the return trip from the mother's house. I don't know if this was necessary because they hashed out everything they need to hash out in the first film. So it feels like, so you guys didn't solve anything on the car ride over because you're right back to it again on the way back. But still not bad overall. I'd say mediocre. I revisited a film that I previously had gotten rid of. I picked it back up for $1 called 2001: A Space Travesty, which was a Leslie Nielsen film. And it was all right. It wasn't as bad as I remembered the first time. It's about this, he plays this cop, and he's recruited into the Space Force to go to the moon and find out what's going on because there's this plot to clone President Clinton. And so he's got to stop that plot from going on. Then I watched a 2022 documentary contender called This Is Guar, which, living in Richmond, I feel like it's a must. I admit, the early parts of it, I felt like, it's like, boy, I was in those areas that they were at, but 20 years later, when I was actually a student on the VCU campus, I was in the buildings that they were in. They attended VCU and the art programs there. So that art building has been there for ages. I've seen some of the stuff that they had originally. I've not been to Guar Bar, though, which you have done. And I've never been to a performance. Did you get to a Guar performance? Though, then again, Guar has never really been up your alley, so I can't imagine you have wanting to gone to a Guar performance when they were big here.
Well, I probably knew of them even then because I did see
they had a reputation.
Empire Records, and there was that one character who loved them. But no, I've never seen one of their shows. And I really wanted to go see This Is Guar when they did the screening here, but I didn't get to. Yeah.
Let's see here. Of course, I watched the Mermaid Forest OVA, not the series. And that one's a pretty dark one. It's one that this is a second watch for me on all of these for the most part, I think. But Mermaid Forest is one that I had seen. This is the second time I've seen it. And it was pretty good to watch again. It's about this woman who ends up kind of been giving mermaid blood, and the mermaid flesh is supposed to be, give you immortality, but it also can kill you or turn you into a monster. And she had the mermaid blood and turned her kind of partially into a monster and made her kind of immortal. So she was killing people off. And then she had the idea of killing off one of the immortals and taking their head and then putting her head on their body to try and gain immortality. It was a very dark one, but Rumiko Takahashi is known to do some horror, and that one was a pretty intense horror film, though not the most intense on this little set here. On the other hand, I watched Butt Crack, which I ended up getting from Wet Movie 1 when he had a lot of trauma stuff, and essentially it's about this guy who is living with this annoying roommate who never pulls his pants up all the way, so he's always got his butt crack out. Well, out of frustration, his roommate accidentally kills him, and then the guy's sister brings him back with a curse saying, if you say butt crack 12 times in one breath, he'll come back and wreak his vengeance. And they did, and the guys, anytime anybody looked at the butt crack, became a murderous zombie. It was interesting. It's more watchable than most trauma, but definitely off the wall, to be sure. I rewatched Deathgasm, which we watched for Inside Movies Galore, and it was kind of a fun watch because I've actually also managed to achieve the ability of having a physical copy of every feature film we've covered on Inside Movies Galore, except for one. So Deathgasm, essentially about these people are trying to form a metal band, and they end up finding the Devil's Hymn, and they play it, which ends up trying to summon this demon to Earth. Were you with us when we did Deathgasm?
Oh, yeah.
That was one I could see that was hard for you in parts, I'm sure. Had a lot of Evil Dead vibes to it. But it was a fun one. It was very enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it again. And another one that we watched for the channel called Devil's Pass, which is a found footage about these people who were going up on this mountain following this expedition that got failed and they died. So, of course, you can tell how successful this one was. But not too bad. It had some fun to it. That's another 10 down. So go for it.
Well, that was 10. Okay, so I'm actually going to be departing from the world of movies for a bit because, again, I ain't gotten to watch anything this last month, but I actually finished a novel. I've been reading a lot, but I actually finished a novel, and it's a big one. It's actually going back to a project I started. Was it 3 years? 2? I think it was 3 years ago. The NPR or wherever it was spearheaded what they called the Great American Read. It was 100 books you need to read. There were some very dubious ones on that list. Was it 150? I can't remember. But anyway, I had read less than a quarter of them. And I made a point by the end of that summer to read 10. And I did. And I made a point that I would eventually finish the list, even the crappy ones. And kind of tabled it because I just don't get to read as much as I would like. And most of the books I read did not fall on that list. But I finally read a classic of American literature, Toni Morrison's Beloved. Very, very important book in a lot of ways. I still have never seen the film, which, if I recall correctly, featured Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover, I believe. Really good book, not a light read by any means. There was that excellent Toni Morrison documentary 3 or 4 years ago called The Pieces I Am, which actually the title comes from a line in this book. And she described her writing as scorched earth writing. And I'm like, that's a pretty good way to say it. But it's a good book. It's worth a read. And glad I got to finish
Hey,
this month. And like I said, I'll go ahead and throw it out there because it gives me something to talk about.
that's good.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I go back at last time. But this is a list of 13, so all right. And then you get to finish this off. All right, this one's a long title. Don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood.
That one.
So I'd never seen this one, I thought, but apparently I had remembered a couple of these scenes, so I have seen it a little bit. It's like one of the first Wayans comedies, and you can tell it feels like it, and it plays off of a lot of films I've never seen, but one of these days I will. I've actually got some of them, like Menace to Society and a couple of the other ones, but it's kind of fun. It's makes fun of a lot of those types of drama movies that were out there. Some more memorable scenes is where you've got the person who's owning the supermarket and she's trailing the two main characters while this white dude is going around ripping them off. Opens up the register, takes all the cash in the register, accidentally leaves $1. He's like, wait, you drop this. And he hands him the last $1 he stole out. It was a pretty good comedy, pretty solid. Wayans have kind of a shaky history of comedies. Some are good, some not so much, like Haunted House 2 or 50 Shades of Black, some of those. But oof. I saw a short film for 2022 called Lucid, live action short horror. And it's a supernatural one about these people discussing this event at dinner, and it involves some sort of demon ghost trying to possess or kill them. Fairly decent, somewhat scary. I'm leaving Street Fighter out, but there is the return of Street Fighter and the Street Fighter's Last Revenge, because I watched the trilogy, because I've got the trilogy set. And they're not as good as the original. I mean, the Street Fighter series is essentially kind of the anti-Bruce Lee, because he basically is this martial artist, but he's a mercenary who basically works for money. He's technically not a good guy, but he's not necessarily a bad guy either. He's just kind of this guy who supposedly works for money when he or when he doesn't. And the last two are kind of inconsistent, but the martial arts pieces were pretty good. He's a pretty skilled martial artist. I want to say it's Sony Chiba, I believe, is the Street Fighter. And he's very skilled. I mean, people have held him up close to Bruce Lee, and I can see that there's a lot that was learned from those films. Again, where Bruce Lee had changed that kind of action flick to where even like in old action flicks, even the grunts would take forever to take down, whereas Bruce Lee is like, knocking them out left and right, except for the big bad guy. And the same thing came here. The only thing I can say that the other two movies had that the first one didn't is they had this ludicrous effect where they basically glued ping pong balls to a guy's eyes to look like the eyes had stuck out. And it looked hilarious to me. I finally faced my fears and watched one of the films that I could not bring myself to watch for Inside Movies Galore, which was Feed. That was Celeste's pick as her favorite film. Is about a guy who essentially feeds these women until they get so fat that they die. It was hard to watch. Not as hard to watch as Salo. Salo is the hardest film I have ever watched for the channel. But this one came close. There is a scene where he is feeding her literal fat, like like fat that was lipoed out of people, where he is sending it down into her mouth in a tube, and it is just like, and the characters aren't likable. Even the police guy who's tracking him down is not a likable guy. It's, I don't know. It just, no, bad. Ugh. So Jacob, stay away from feed. If they ever decide to come back to it, stay away from it. I watched a trauma film called Hemo, and it was pretty good. It's about two vampires hanging out. That was about it. Actually, a little bit boring, tell you the truth. I don't know what that one is. Let's see. The Leaf Stalked. Oh, not The Leaf. The Reef Stalked, which is the sequel to The Reef. It's a 2022 film, but it didn't make any of the lists that I have so far. Essentially, this woman sees her friend drown because she didn't get there in time to protect her from her husband. So they're confronting their fears by going out in the reef. And apparently this shark has this vendetta against them because it tracks them down and tries to kill each one of them individually. I don't know why the shark has this particular vendetta against them, but it's the only thing I can think of because sharks don't act like this shark. Basically, this shark would take like platforms that were just not moving. Actually, you know marine wildlife well enough.
All right.
So tell me if this suits a shark. Okay. This shark, no movement, just decides to totally destroy a boat that's just floating listlessly in the water. After biting it multiple times and realizing it's metal, but keeps destroying it so that they would not get away.
It was just pissed off with that boat.
Apparently. And then, of course, it would track down each of the people. And it would ignore the others while it was hunting that one person. It was like... And apparently it eats like 3 people in the movie whole, but still comes after them, like within 5 minutes, comes after them. And I'm like, can sharks eat a whole person that quickly and then want to come back for it? I don't know. But we watched that. Then I watched one of my favorite Rumiko Takahashi's stuff that I'd watched a long time ago, Mermaid Scar. I love Mermaid Scar. It is creepy. It is my favorite of the Mermaid Forest. They redid it in the newer Mermaid Forest series, but this original telling is the best in my opinion. It's about this little kid, and you find out the little kid is immortal, and he's using the mermaid flesh to basically have new parents to travel with him. And that's, I mean, the part where he has the one woman wrapped in barbed wire, saying it's like, you may be immortal, but I know you can feel pain. And I'm like, God damn. That was one of those early anime I watched. I was like, God damn, that's not for kids. Another one that I watched was 1 Pound Gospel, which was the only animated adaptation of that series. It's kind of fun. It's about this boxer, but this boxer has this issue. He doesn't like to train, though he apparently has some sort of skill. But they're trying to get him to fit into featherweight when obviously his body type is not meant for featherweight. And so he's starving all the time in order to get to featherweight. And he runs into this nun, and he has a special relationship with this nun. This is one series that I'm fairly intimately familiar with because I've read the entire manga, and I've seen the live action series, which I hope they release one day. The last of the Rumiko Takahashi stuff I watched was The Laughing Target. Now, you talk about dark. This one goes dark.
Yeah.
You know The Laughing Target, about this demonic girl who eventually gets promised kind of to marry this one guy. Finds out he has a girlfriend, decides to off the girlfriend, and anybody who basically gets in her way. And it's, like I say, it goes dark. And even when you think that it's going to end in this kind of sad way, no. They even pull that horror trope of demon comes back at the end. So Laughing Target's really good to watch. To me, I think that's the closest to a traditional horror that I've seen.
That was a good one. I liked it.
And speaking of horror, I'm going to end it with Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, which is the Resident Evil anime series they did, which, is a computer generated, but still it's anime. And this follows the Resident Evil anime actually follow the video games, which is very different from, say, the series. And I watched a documentary on the new series, and I've seen the first 2 episodes of it so far, and I'm still wondering, he says this could go very well after the games. I still don't get there's any relationship to the games. But this series, you can tell that there's definitely one. This takes place shortly before Resident Evil 6, and Leon is called in with a special task force by the president to figure out what's going on with this military unit that they found out where they were using bioweapons, zombies, when they were trying to invade this country. So they've got to find out the secret behind it. It's got a lot of cool characters in it from the original series. If you're a fan of the games, these are the ones to go for. The 3 computer animated movies and this series, definitely the way to go.
Cool.
And I'm done.
Woo! Well then, I guess we'll polish it off with nice figure. Sorry. I mentioned earlier that I would have mentioned Belfast regardless. It's interesting sometimes to see the types of films that people will do in the order that they'll do them in. Belfast was a very personal film for Kenneth Branagh, written, directed by Branagh, a film that made history. He became the first person ever to be nominated for Oscars in 7 different categories, partly because of that movie, although he had already, I think he was already up to 5 before that. And he followed it up with a movie that will be lucky if it gets more than a couple of nods, which is a shame because it's a gorgeous and very entertaining film that we watched this week, which is his adaptation, the second in his series of adaptations of works by Agatha Christie, his version of Death on the Nile, where he reprises his role of Hercule Poirot, one of the world's most famous and weirdest detectives, with what has to be the most impressive mustache of any detective that I have ever seen on screen. Then I joked at the beginning. The beginning actually starts with a World War I believe it is, battle sequence where we get to see Poirot's analytical mind at work, where he basically saves his entire company from needless death on the battlefield, except for his mustachioed captain, who unfortunately doesn't make it through the battle. And Poirot, of course, takes it personally and also takes a shell to the face. And I'm not sure this film quite understood the physics of how facial hair works when you're scarred. But, all that aside, I joked at the beginning that it is an impressive and mighty mustache that requires its own origin story, but that is what this film gives us. Yeah. So that was pretty amusing. using. But basically, Brana is a great Poirot. I have not seen I've not seen really anything with him. There is an older version of Death on the Nile that featured Peter Ustinov that has a phenomenal cast. Angela Lansbury, Jack Warden, Maggie Smith, whole bunch of people, Olivia Hussey. I have this. I want to watch it. I kind of wanted to watch them back to back, but now I really want to watch it. But this version features an unrecognizable Russell Brand. It features Gal Gadot in sort of the main role, Armie Hammer, Annette Bening. Pretty impressive cast, but not quite of the same caliber of the older version. But just like the recent Murder on the Orient Express, which was a little more star-studded, it's directed by Brana. He plays Poirot. He kind of shapes and shepherds the whole thing. And it's a good movie. It's very well written. I have not read the book, so I don't know how it is as an adaptation. But it has some wonderful turns of phrase. It's very well written. It does devolve slightly at the end from what I would have expected, and I don't know if that is the fault of the movie's writing or if that is the actual book. I do need to, like I said, need to read it. But it was a very entertaining film. I'm finally up to a whopping 6 features and a short for 2022. But yeah, one of these days I need to really, probably around the time we finish watching movies for the Versus Awards, I'll be really kicking it into high gear with 2022, hopefully. But it was a good film. I enjoyed it. It was, yeah. And there were probably a couple more during the month. I just totally, I don't recall. But,
well, yeah. And actually, on the mustache note, that Abercrombie and Fitch documentary, you need to watch it just for the fact that I have never before seen an African-American man with a waxed mustache.
I believe I've seen that. Yeah.
It's like he was wearing he was rocking a stylish mustache. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that before. It had a little twist and everything in it, and I was like, oh my gosh.
That's nice. We got Spirit behind us trying to get on the screen there. Hey, Spirit.
Well, with that being said, I hope you all have enjoyed this. Mm-hmm. If you have, click that like button, hit that subscribe. Mm-hmm. And you, too, should be watching that 2021 movies.
Yep.
Because we got the Versus Awards, and nominations have ended, and voting will be ending in 14 days. Mm-hmm. So you better get to that. Get over to our Facebook page below, join us, and that's all you have to do is join the group, and you'll be able to vote in all of
One of us.
All 33 categories.
All right.
I hope you all have enjoyed, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye. Bye-bye.